Hello and welcome to week 3 in research methods. And Houston, we have a problem. Not a big problem. That's a quote from NASA, by the way, if you don't. Anyway, we have a problem. The course is going very well. The discussions, the quizzes, the regular chapter assignments, gung-ho. Special assignments, things are a little weak, and I need to address it today before it becomes too much of a problem. The statistics are right now that 5 out of 8 of you have submitted the review of the proposal assignment, which is to take that item that you did in the last weeks of statistics and jazz it up a bit, get it ready for it to be the introduction, following all the instructions and whatnot. 5 of you have completed that. All of you got a 0. I'm reminding you that I'm going to be scoring everything a 0 until you redo them, and hopefully it's just, maybe one time, because I leave all my feedback, get it more perfect, and if it's close enough, I'm going to give you 100. It's a mastery perspective on these particular assignments. There's 2 grades, 0, 100. Those are the only grades you can get on these assignments. Only one person has submitted a revision, so I'm still waiting for revisions, and I'm waiting for the first submissions of a number of you. The second assignment that was due this last week was the one on ethics and writing out your, let me get it here, your informed consent, sorry. Only 4 have been submitted. Now, these things are hard assignments. I know that. This is a capstone class for your entire degree. In fact, I think almost all of you, this is it. This is the last class you're taking. It's the one that's going to be the most demanding, and you're taking it in 12 weeks instead of 15, 16 weeks. So I hope you understand that we're going to be progressing along the way. Now, all is not lost. Far from that. I understand that these are very difficult and challenging assignments. That doesn't mean you don't do them. Cannot pass this class without doing all 10 of those assignments. That is the core of this class. If you've ever took developmental psych, this is like the biography. It's just worth a lot in the class, the whole bunch of them. Now, if you haven't done the first assignment, you need to get on board and start doing that. If maybe some of you are, the one person that wrote the revision also submitted their second assignment, and that's the kind of pace I would like. You can go a little slow at the beginning, but this is going to start to pile up. You want to get those revisions in, and you want to keep up with all of the assignments. It's still early in the class. A good day, maybe a couple days, you can get as much done as you can. You can work ahead, and look at those things and just revise them as you go. I have one person who's going to be revising their original study, so they're going to be submitting a new part 1 and probably a new part 2, and so these are things you need to stay on top of. They're very, very vital for your success in doing the assignment at the end. To put this off is really not an option. I don't want this to extend into the fall. I don't want to give incompletes. You signed up for this, and the next time we're teaching this class is in next spring, face-to-face, and then next summer. So you don't want to drop this class and delay it any more than you already have. And I'm not suggesting that anybody's anywhere close to dropping this class. We are still early, but I'm firing a shot over the bow, and I'm just telling you, do not procrastinate on these things. If you're having trouble, get in touch with me. I am willing to have Zoom calls with you. I'm willing to have face-to-face meetings with you, and I'm even willing to set up a schedule of office hours for this class, and anybody wants to drop in with questions, just say the word and I'll start putting that stuff out there to support you through this process. It's confusing, it's a deep learning curve, and it's a short time frame. I know I have met all of you except one, and I know each one of you can do well in this class. And so I have no problem giving extra time and doing that. This is my full-time job. So if those are solutions, pop them into the, if you're looking at a regular meeting, you want me to put up some office hours, when would be a good time for that to be? Let's see if we can come to some consensus and people can come in with all of their questions and we can Zoom, or we can even do it face-to-face or one-on-one face-to-face. Hey, as long as it's not on the weekends when I'm gigging, I'll be there. Okay, so that's enough of that. Make sure you get on top of those things. Here we are in chapter 3, and we're taking a really deep dive into variables. We're learning about what variables are. Think of the word variable. It's things that change. Okay, we're looking deep at what's a independent variable and what's a dependent variable. And they're sort of, the independent is sort of like doesn't give you as much clue, but dependent does. Dependent means that variable depends on something. So the independent variable is the one we're examining. The dependent variable is the effect. So if I was looking at different teaching styles online and I had 3 different teaching styles, the teaching style variable would be the independent variable, and I would be measuring those different methods of teaching impact on learning, which is the dependent variable. Now, once we look at independent and dependent variables and the different kinds of ways that can be defined and operationalized, we have to think, how are we going to that operationalized? How are we going to measure that? We're sticking with statistical-based psychology experiments here, or studies. How do we measure that? If I'm going to measure learning, how do I do? The brightness of their eyes when the aha moment hits? Or am I going to use grades on a test? Or am I going to grades in the class? Or maybe I'll have a focus group and I'll do it a little bit more loosely in terms of gathering information about their learning. Or maybe I have to have them perform a task and see how accurate they are with that task. Each one of those is a way that you, the experimenter, decide how are you going to define all of these variables. They have to be clearly defined, measurable, understandable, and something that you can pull off within the context of doing this class. So you're going to be looking at your study, and you're going to be defining what are the variables. What's the one that's the one that I'm going to manipulate, different treatments or different things, and what does it affect? So there's a cause and effect. So we're looking at that relationship between those. So my independent study person that's doing this class is looking at whether or not people have kids or not, and happiness. So the independent variable is actually different groups. Some people who have kids, some people who want kids, some people who have never had kids, measuring how happy they are, and we're going to compare those groups. So kid status is one variable being measured by those 3 definitions of groups. And the independent variable. The dependent variable is the happiness instrument that we found. That the score on that is going to be there's all kinds of ways to define happiness, but when we operationalize it, we pick one of them. So I'm having you look at your study and determine what are the variables and how am I measuring them. And the next assignment is your hypotheses, which you're going to describe the relationship between the measures of your independent variable and the measures of your dependent variable. What do you think is going to be the relationship between those? So getting these variables defined and down is key. This is going to be a time where you might want to reach out to me to talk about your study, and there might be some modifications that you're going to make. Oftentimes, I reduce the number of variables that you have to replicate. You're not doing the whole study because you might not be able to access some of the information from your study. We might simplify the actual variables and their relationships with dependent variables. So this is a good time to reach out with me, have an email conversation, one-on-one, whatever we can do. If we look at the, the discussion is on operational definitions and response scales. Response scales are, is it check all of the above? Is it yes or no, true, false, 1, never, 2, sometimes, 3, always, which is different than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is different than 1, 2, 3, 4, which is different than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are all Likert scales. There's actually a science between how many you should have in those choices, if that's what you're going to be doing. Response scales. In quiz number 3, you're going to be looking at independent and dependent variables and also the Hawthorne effect. There's a question on describing the Hawthorne effect. And then we have the assignment where you're going to be looking at your variables. So let's actually take a look at that assignment here. Here I have the course book, and I have special assignments down here. And we have the review of the proposal, ethics and informed consent, and then defining variables. Let's click right there. And describing the variables outlined in your source study, both theoretically and operationally. Theoretically is, what's the idea? But then operationally, how did they define it? So happiness as measured by the International Happiness Scale, however that's going to be. Compare and contrast the manner in which you will be operationally defining the variables with the source article. They may be the same, they may be different. And then I'm having you undergo an exercise exploring alternative ways. So if you're looking at happiness and you're going to use the happiness scale that's in the article, how else? Just speculate. Let's say I couldn't access that scale. How else might I measure happiness? Could it just, maybe I'll just have, you go in the hospital, you have those amount of pain, you have the smiley face all the way to the crying face. Maybe just do that. Pick the circle, pick the face that best matches your general mood. That could be a measure. Not a very good one, but it could be a measure. So as we look down here to the task, and then of course the grading rubric here, the title page, 15 points, the comparative description, that's yours, and it's the ones from the article and the ones that you're actually going to be using. So that's where that decision comes in. Any alternative ways that you can measure your particular variables, APA style through the whole thing. That means you're referencing these. When you reference information from your article, you have to put the in-text citations, and you're going to have a references page. It's part of every assignment, just about. And so make sure you have that in APA format. I'm critiquing the APA format, and it's one of those obsessive compulsive parts of studying psychology. And then of course mechanics. So make sure you review these assignments very, very carefully. Now this is the 3rd out of 10, and some of you, and I'm not belittling you, I know you have a lot going on, but this is all voluntary, right? So anyway, get the first one done, get the second one. If you do all these 3, do all 3. Get them all done. And then keep an eye on when I'm going to post, or when what I'm going to do, when you get 100 on something, I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to say, you're all set with the review of the proposal. You're all set with the informed consent. I'm going to be going through those. Up until then, I'll just be making general announcements. I have reviewed reviewed them all. Please go look. And if you see a 0, that doesn't mean it didn't get graded. That means you have to look at my comments. I write comments all over your papers and leave messages and tell when things are great and tell when things need to be fixed and all that stuff. So here's the 3rd one like that, working toward mastery. And so I hope you get right on that. Again, please reach out through email or through the the community discussion board, or the student lounge or course lounge. And if you want to set up some times to meet with me one-on-one, or if we want to work on maybe establishing a weekly time where I'll be available online for people to log in a couple times maybe to work with different people's schedule. I really want to help you be successful. There's a lot of work to this class, so I know you're going to be working hard for it. I just want to make sure that you have access to me so that you can get your questions clarified in a timely manner. So dive in, have a great week. With all that, make sure you're still spending some time outside. It's the greatest time to be in Maine, and spend time with your family, do all that. Strike balance, but make sure there's enough work going into this class so that you're successful. So I look forward to getting some assignments, looking forward to grading the informed consent. I'll be doing that later on today or tomorrow. And then I'll see you in the discussion board. So have a great week, and I'll see you later.